All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody coming to our second speaker. Um, by the way, don't let me forget, but you have to sign the wall. Our speakers now, it's a tradition. We started with our first speaker.
Mm-hmm.
You got to sign the wall.
I like it.
Thank you.
The unfortunate thing is, so I was #1 on Silver Savage. Now
You
I'm
were.
#2 on this.
Were you number one? I think you were number two on Silver Savage too. Yeah,
Was I?
you're number two.
Who was #1?
You're consistently number two. You're consistently the first loser.
First guest. There you go.
You're the first one I invite always. I think just timing wise, it never works out
Okay.
at the first one, so we got to fill it in with somebody else.
All right.
Does that make you feel better?
If you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. All right, perfect. So, guys, I don't know how many times I spoke about Dr. Nager. It's hard for me to call you Dr. Nager. Can I call you Eric?
Whatever you like.
All right. So I've known Eric for a long, long while. Eric, actually, we met just to. I'm gonna let him do his brief, but we met doing a survey assessment on a Jewish day school. From an active shooter standpoint, I came as a consultant. He had kids at the school at the time, and we met and we kind of clicked. And then he joined Masada. He was a member for a while until we broke him. And then he's like, well, I need my hands and feet working for my job, so can't afford to do this on a regular basis. But we became really good friends, and we do a lot of things outside of our professional interactions, medically speaking. But the main reason why I thought everybody can benefit from having you on the podcast and certainly being as a guest is when I had issues, and I shared this story in the past, but I'm going to share it again real quickly. I was tired all the time. I was early 40s. I'm like, I'm tired all the time. I was meeting with Eric not only as a doctor, but he was actually he was a mentor of mine on the business side as well. We were meeting for breakfast, and I was mentioning that to him, and he was doing his transition from being an ER physician to specializing in optimized health, and he needed guinea pigs. Like, I'll be a guinea pig, and we started. I give a lot of credit because a lot of doctors that I talk to are like, well, you need testosterone. We're just going to start giving you injections. And he's like, no, let's do some tests. Let's see what the numbers really are. And let's see what's causing. My numbers were really low. I mean, we're talking single double digits. They're supposed to be between 200 and 800, just somewhere in that range. Am I correct? So mine were really low. The only symptom I had, I was tired all the time. Like I told him, and Eric is like, well, you're burning the candle on both ends. I'm like, no, this feels different. I mean, I know fatigue. I know tired. I've been in the military. This does not feel the same. We did all the work and found out that my testosterone truly was low. And Eric is like, well, let's find out why. Before we start supplementing with hormonal therapy, let's find out why it's low. We did a bunch of other tests, and really, ultimately, we did a lead test, which found out that my lead was off the charts. So we did maybe a year of chelation, of taking pills every day, like 9 pills a day or something like that, to really take those heavy metals out, which helped, took my testosterone within range. Also, at the same time, was dating Tyler, so apparently dating someone that's 20 years younger has helped with testosterone as well. But we also knew we wanted to have another child, so we didn't get on testosterone immediately. But once we had Gal and everything was saved, and at that point we decided, okay, we want to ramp it too. I don't want to be within range. I want to be on the top range because that's just the way we roll. And we started doing that. I feel awesome. I mean, Doc knows it obviously, but my numbers now are in the high 900s. Sometimes just a little bit over 1,000, depending. So we try to manage it. And I feel really, really good. When I'm tired now, it's because I'm not sleeping. It's not because my testosterone is low. But you guys saw the video yesterday of me deadlifting 395 pounds, which for me, that's a new PR. That's great. No injuries, no issues, no pain, which I probably couldn't have done before. So I credit Eric with that. Eric gets my 395 pounds on that one. But awesome, Eric, man. That was a long intro of mine. I'm sorry, but I have a lot of good things to say about you. How about you tell everybody a little bit about your background, where you come from, what you do?
So
I'm going to have a drink.
Have a drink. So to piggyback onto what BK was saying, so I was an ER doc for over 20 years, probably back in 2015, I got involved. I went to a conference on functional medicine. I didn't know what that was. It was really just to try to get healthier. And when I got there, I managed to talk to a bunch of docs that were already doing this for a living. I had no idea that this was a thing. I'm like, really? I can actually do this for a living, try to get people healthier? Sure enough, it exists, right? Like, that's what medicine should be, right? It shouldn't be just somebody comes in with a problem, here's a prescription. It should be like, can we find a proactive way to avoid having to get on prescriptions and other solutions other than just more medications, right? So I did a fellowship in this for 3 years, took written boards, oral boards, and functional medicine in a nutshell, what is it? It's finding the root cause of illness. So when somebody comes in and they have a complaint, like in your case, it was fatigue. Yeah, I mean, you go to your doctor, well, here's a prescription, or maybe you need an antidepressant, or whatever. But there could be a lot of reasons why somebody's fatigued. It's multifactorial. So getting to the root of that and figuring it out, that's what makes people healthier. And sometimes it's a prescription, sometimes it's a lifestyle change, sometimes it's a dietary thing, sometimes it's a supplement. It varies from person to person. So when folks come in for functional medicine, we're looking at the whole picture. We're meeting for a while, asking lots of questions, and then figuring out ways not to just get somebody normal, but to optimize them. It's all about trying to be the healthiest version of you, have the best health span, not just living forever, but being as healthy as you can during that period of time. So that's what we focused on. And so BK and I obviously have got a long history. I've done a lot of work with law enforcement. I was on the SWAT team for 2006 to 2015, fire department for 14 years. So did a lot of work with EMS. So we're, brothers from another mother. This is what we love.
So I have all these questions here, but I know I'm going to go on tangents because you keep spitting stuff out and like, oh, I want to talk about that, or I want to talk about that, right? But I'm going to try to stick to it as much as I can. So you talk about being proactive, right? And what are some of the biggest issues you see in modern days in society, right? As causing of illness? Like, why are people coming to you primarily?
Right. So the funny thing that I'll tell people often is if we just lived like we did 100 years ago, you probably wouldn't need doctors for the most part. We're doing a lot of things now that were never done before. You're around electronics all the time. The cell phone is on constantly, high amounts of stress, eating garbage food, not exercising, not being out in the sun. So a lot of things that we used to do, nobody's doing anymore. All right. So if you just did a lot of those things, we wouldn't need half of the medications and half of the interventions. So I think a lot of it is everybody's busy. How many people are saying, I can't tell you how many people come to the practice and they're like, I'm too busy to exercise. It's like, really? Okay. I'm pretty busy too. But I make time, right? You've got to make time for your health. And that's really a big part of it. A lot of folks sort of fall back on this, like, I'm too busy going to school. I'm busy going to work. I'm working 5 days a week. I've got 2 jobs. I get it. Like, we're definitely busy. But then I'll say, all right, well, how many days a week are you working your second job? Tuesday and Thursday. What are you doing on the weekends? What about Monday, Wednesday, Friday? You don't have, half an hour when you get home, or you can't go on your lunch break. So the reality is people make choices. And unfortunately, a lot of times those choices don't help them. And so when we're looking at things like exercise, that's going to be, in my book, it's number one. You guys are all part of this crew here, so you know the importance of exercise. Nutrition's another big one, right? We're surrounded by poison. This is not an accident. Okay, the food that we're eating and the stuff that you get when you go out and all the junk that's in the supermarkets, it's by design. Thank goodness that RFK got in, because at least people know about this now, right? Thank goodness, because it's coming to the forefront, right? This was all sort of hidden. Nobody talked about it. Big Ag, in conjunction with other special interests, they've just basically taken the American public and they've taken us for a joyride. And now it's time, hopefully, for people to open their eyes and learn from some of these things.
Yeah, I give it to Tyler, but you showed me a comparison of cereal label in America compared to a cereal label, the same cereal in theory, right? Cornflakes, let's say, in Europe. And then the amount of ingredients that they have is maybe a quarter of what we have. And most of the stuff on the labels in America, you can't even pronounce, right? Because it's all such processed chemicals, right? And that's a huge issue, right? I'm going to try to stay away from politics, but I'm glad they say I'm all about making America healthy again. All right. Sorry. Am I getting into politics? I'm going to try to stay away from it. All right. So you talked about number one in your book is exercise. I usually tell people there are 4 categories to wellness, right? So I put exercise, nutrition, rest, which is where I have my biggest, and then supplementation. I think, unfortunately, nobody gets everything. Even if you did everything perfect, we're always going to lack something. So supplementation is going to be important. So if I had to take one of each one of those categories, what is one thing in each one of those that you would recommend people do? So as far as exercise, what's the bare minimum that would make it healthy? And what kind of exercise?
Got it. I'd say strength training is probably number one in my book. All right. So the reason for that is we tend to lose, depending on your age, and obviously this is going to vary from, depending on how old you are, but after the age of 40, we tend to lose muscle at an accelerated rate. So it's very, very important. If you're in this for the long game and you want to be able to do things when you're older, you need to hold on to as much muscle as you possibly can. So strength training is going to be huge. But look, even if you're 18, even if you were a kid, strength training is going to propel you into adulthood. It's going to give you a lot of assets that go beyond the gym. So I'd say strength training, in my mind, is number one. What's your second one?
Hold on. So as far as strength training, can you build muscle after 40?
100%. You
Okay,
can
just
build
making
muscle
sure.
after 70.
I just making sure you're not bursting my bubble here because I still have aspirations. All right, nutrition.
Nutrition. Okay. Eating whole foods. Okay. Very easy. Like, you don't have to get crazy with this. People are like, well, can you write down like a diet for me of what I should and shouldn't eat? And I say, it's very simple. Eat out as little as you can. Try to make most of your stuff at home, right? It's going to be cheaper. It takes time, yes, but you have control over everything. You know exactly what's going into it. You know the ingredients. You're not eating trash. Let's face it, since COVID, does the food really taste that good in restaurants anymore? I mean, it sucks all the time. I don't know. I'm always disappointed. So anyway, cooking at home, but eating whole foods. You should, like you had mentioned, if you read a label on something, you go to the supermarket, you read a label. If you can't pronounce it or your grandmother couldn't pronounce what's in the ingredient list, you probably shouldn't be eating it. If it has seed oils in it, right? What's a seed oil? Things like canola oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil. Those are all various processed oils. The way that they make them, they end up becoming poisonous to us. They're just very inflammatory, not good. So try to eat whole foods with ingredients that you can pronounce, with as few ingredients on the package as possible. So really try not to eat things from a box if possible. Cook it yourself. Grass-fed, grass-finished, organic when possible. Eat as many colors of the rainbow. So just basic principles. Doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Perfect. Rest, specifically sleep hygiene. I know that's a thing that you and I spoke about a lot, but what are some things that people can do to make sure they sleep the right amount and a good sleep at that? Because sometimes it's not about the amount of hours you get, but the quality of it, right?
So respecting your sleep. How many of us, we're up late because we've been working all day and we need me time, right? It's the end of the day. You've been like taking care of the kids. You've been at work. You've been at school. It's like you need that downtime. I get it. But what ends up happening is if you don't respect your sleep time and you end up staying up late to burn the candle because you didn't complete that work project, or you want to play video games, or you want to watch another TV show on Netflix, you're pushing that sleep window back. So the more time that you get to sleep before midnight, there's like an old adage, for every hour before midnight, it's worth 2 hours after midnight. So why is that? Because of circadian rhythms. We're meant to go to sleep when it's dark, and we're meant to wake up when it's light. So if you're going to bed at 12, 1 o'clock, you're cheating yourself out of a lot of very important rest. Before going to bed, you mentioned sleep hygiene. Well, what is sleep hygiene? It's all the different things that are important to get you that good quality sleep. Room as dark as possible, as quiet as possible, as cold as possible. Avoid electronics within 2 hours of bedtime, okay? Why? You look at a screen, there's blue light on all these screens. Your retina absorbs that. It tells your body, if you think about looking at a blue sky during the daytime. You look at a blue sky, it sees the day, be productive, right? Same thing happens when you're exposed to blue light on your phone, on a TV, on a video game. Your retina absorbs that, and then you shut down production of melatonin. Melatonin is your sleep hormone, so you won't get as much of it as it would be produced. If you're playing a video game, it's jazzing your brain up, right? Your brain wants to get into rest mode before you go to sleep. It doesn't want to be in work mode. So if you're doing those things, the brain becomes very busy, less likely to have a very good quality night of sleep. When you do get to bed, try not to drink after 8 o'clock at night. Why? Because you drink a lot. Well, large quantities.
I got 50 minutes.
You're screwing everything up. Why? So yeah, you don't want to drink a lot because you don't want to wake up to have to pee, right? And then in the morning, you wake up with the sun. So if you can, right? So ideally, everyone's a little different. What's kind of a gold standard? 7.5 to 8.5 hours a night. Some people need a little bit less. Sleeping more is not necessarily good either. So sleeping 9, 10 hours, that's actually a sign of something possibly being wrong. So it could be like other things like sleep apnea or not having a good restful night of sleep, spending that kind of time in bed.
Cool. I say I want to talk about supplements, but we'll mention alcohol. What's your take on that?
So I used to drink a lot more.
I know it's a touchy point.
I used to love bourbon. And the thing is, I'm not saying you can never have alcohol. It used to be, we used to think men could get away with more than women. So men could have 1 or 2 drinks a day, women no more than 3 to 5 a week. Why? Because at least for women over 40, the rate of breast cancer goes up substantially with more drinks than that. So that's a huge killer of women at young ages. Men, for whatever reason, we thought they could metabolize it. It thinned the blood. It was good for this and that. It turns out it's probably close to zero. The acceptable for both is close to zero. Why?
So bizarre mean 1 to 2, right?
You're screwed, man. Right. So it's a toxin. Alcohol is a toxin. And so your liver has to spend time detoxifying it after you drink. So I'm not saying never have a drink, but it's all about moderation. And if you're interested in optimizing your health, you do it as little as possible. Many of you will get to a point where you drink and you just don't like how you feel. You notice that you don't sleep well. So when you drink alcohol, try to push it as far away from bedtime as you can, because alcohol will disrupt your sleep architecture. You will not sleep as well. So think about it. Anytime you drank before you went to bed, think about a night of sleep. It was usually trash. You might have passed out, but it didn't feel like restful sleep. You wake up in the morning, you just don't feel great, and it's because it disrupts that deep sleep. You don't get it. So if you do want to drink, push it out as far away from bedtime as you can.
So day drinking is fine.
That's
what I'm thinking of this.
Of course you would. They drink all day long.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I did. To your point, though, it did get to a point. It did help that my wife hasn't drank in about 2 years. So for me, it was a social thing, and not having something to drink with did factor in. But I also didn't sleep well, so I now drink on Wednesday nights here and on the weekends. I really limited it a lot because of it. Supplementation. So my daughter saw me putting my vitamins together for the week the other night, and I have like 20 bottles. I take 2 pills of this. She goes, "You're like an old man." I'm like, "Yeah, the difference is none of these are medications." So what are some supplements you think everybody should take? What are more specific? And is there such thing as too much of a good thing in a sense?
Tricky questions, all of them. I don't think there's one universal supplement that everybody should take, because everybody's situation is different. So I wouldn't say everybody has to be on a multivitamin or everybody has to do vitamin D or vitamin C. It doesn't necessarily work that way. I try to tailor it to somebody's individual needs. So sometimes it's based on a lab test. So we might get vitamin D levels and find out that they're low, and then we might add vitamin D. If somebody has problems with gut health, they're not pooping well, they're constantly having issues with constipation or diarrhea, or they're getting sick a lot, I might say probiotics would be great, because 60 to 70% of your immune system is located in your gut. If we can improve gut health, your immune system will improve, you're less likely to get sick. So it really does depend. So there's not one universal thing for everybody. I'd say that if you are eating well and you're eating a well-balanced diet, you really don't need a multivitamin. Multivitamins are for folks who either have a specific condition where they're lacking a nutrient, or they're on medications that cause them to lose those nutrients. So like if you were on blood pressure medicine, like a diuretic that makes you pee, you might be more likely to lose vitamins and minerals. So I would put you on a multivitamin in that case. Vitamin C, I probably wouldn't take it all year round. You might want to use something like that in the wintertime to help bolster the immune system, but no need to take it all year. In the summertime, if you're outside, you're getting plenty of vitamin D, so you wouldn't need it then. In the winter, different story. We can't make vitamin D in Maryland in the winter. There's no UV. There's no UV to produce vitamin D, so you cannot make it on your own. Even if it's a beautiful day, you can't make it on your own. So I would say for supplementation, probably you could get carried away, and a lot of times people come in with bags of supplements. They're like, look at everything that I'm on. It's very expensive. It's not necessary for everybody. I think you pick and choose based on what the condition is, and I try to make it more of a precision thing than anything else.
Yeah, and I will attest to that, because my supplements today are different than what they were a year ago. And on my last visit to you, there was actually 2 supplements you told me to stop taking because they weren't doing what we expected them to do. We switched to something else, and it's always based on my blood work. So just so you guys know, I get blood work between our meetings. We meet about every 3 months or so. Somewhere in the middle, I get blood work done. So when I go to the next meeting, we know the numbers. And as that kind of as those numbers come up, we factor what's needed and what's not. So everything has been changing over the years. Some things are added, some things are taken out. So I do as an example to kind of test to what Dr. Nager was saying. So I came for you for testosterone, right? And we went through our process, but I learned a lot through it from you about the needs of people, all the different benefits for it. For me, for example, a lot of it has to do with heart health as well, not just testosterone, but also estrogen, which I found interesting. By the way, I did a blood work that tells you the stress on your heart. Apparently, I have the heart of a 70-year-old. So if I drop dead today, you know what? My wife is looking at me with a cross-eyed right now. But
not happy.
She's not happy. She'll be rich though. But just so you guys understand, so testosterone has certainly a lot of functions. One thing you told me is that actually a lot of your patients are not even men, which is what you would think. A lot of people are women that are depleted on testosterone. And I thought that was interesting. So can you talk a little bit about the role of testosterone? Why should people get that tested? At what age? And what are some of the benefits of it?
Yep. So testosterone is something typically we think of as something mainly for men, right? That's the main thing. When somebody hears testosterone, they think man. but women need it just as importantly as men do. Maybe not in the same quantities, and they don't need the same levels, but it serves a role for both men and for women. We should be able to produce sex hormones, at least testosterone. Men should be able to produce that well into their 60s or 70s. Women will produce it into their 40s or 50s, depending on when menopause comes. It serves a similar role for both sexes. So when you think about testosterone, for men, it will be important for energy levels, ability to put on lean muscle mass, strength, libido, erectile function, cardiovascular health. There are a number of different benefits. For women, it helps out with libido, ability to put on lean muscle mass, ability to heal after injuries, a lot of the same things that it does for men. Now, women who, when folks have a relative deficiency in testosterone, they'll know that something is off. They don't feel like the best version of themselves. They're going to the gym, the workouts are not productive, they're not able to put on lean muscle, they're getting injuries that just don't heal. So those are tip-offs that there may be a problem with testosterone. In that case, we would go ahead and get levels. Now, it used to be you only had to get levels in older folks, all right? So, somebody, when I say older, it's a relative term, but like really it should have only had to be 50s and 60s. Now, I've got guys in my practice in their 20s with low testosterone. I've got women in my practice in their 20s and 30s with low testosterone. And why is that? Well, unfortunately, we live in a very toxic environment. Okay, there's an interesting book called Estrogenation, and the author talks about all of the chemicals in our environment are hormone. There are so many chemicals called hormone disruptors, and what those are is anything from plastics to phthalates. Plastics are really the biggest one, but there's chemicals in just about everything. And what's happening is it's disrupting our hormones, and it's causing our hormones to be abnormally low. This never existed 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now we have guys in their 20s who have lower levels than some of my 70 and 80-year-old patients. It's crazy. What do they have in common? Usually exposed to toxins at higher levels. So just about every cop, fireman, and military guy in my practice has low testosterone if they're a man. We're seeing that a lot of women are developing this in their 20s and 30s as well for the same reasons. So what can you do proactively, right? Like, let's say that you want to say, I don't want to be that guy or that gal that has a low hormone level. What can I do? The first thing is look at your personal hygiene products. There's a free website called ewg.org, Environmental Working Group. You can plug in any hygiene product that you have, deodorant, shampoo, suntan lotion, soap, and this is important for our kids too. You plug it in and it'll give you a rating of every product. 10 is like overtly carcinogenic, 0 is like water. You want to keep things 4 and below. And it'll actually tell you what the categories are, like hormone disruptors. So when you look at that, you can be very proactive at picking your
like everybody's on their cell phone checking that site right now.
Do it now. It's free. And then they have an app so you can scan things. So like when my kids go to Target, they know that if it's higher than a 4, they have to return it or throw it out. Although my son snuck in some like Old Spice deodorant. I don't know,
it smells good, man.
I know it does smell good. I can't give him a hard time about everything, but you try. So so those are some things that you can do. Get rid of all the plastic in your house. All right, I'm drinking out of a glass right here. I have when I go to work, I have coffee or water in metal containers, right? So that's kind of what you want to think about is get rid of your plastic. Don't drink out of plastic water bottles if you can help it.
So Nalgene is not good even though they say BPA free.
It's a gimmick. So there's BPA, right, that you don't want. There's BPB, BPC, BPD, BT. It goes on. It's a gimmick. So it's so that, yes. So it's just another thing that unfortunately, and how many years did I eat Chinese food and heat my stuff up in those crappy plastic containers? That's one of the worst things you can do because the plastic leaches into the food. So try to get rid of plastic in your life. Get rid of the Tupperware, get rid of the plastic cups. Try to, have yourself, your kids, your family use glass or metal, stainless steel, because it's not reactive. And, do your best to just detox. You're never going to get rid of all the toxins. It just can't. We live in such a bad, toxic society. You can't get rid of everything, but you can minimize it, right? So those are some proactive things that you can do.
So when we talk about testosterone, it's funny because I talk to a lot of people and they say, well, I went to my doctor and they tested and they said I'm normal, right? Mm-hmm. So your general practitioner does not look at testosterone the same way that you would, mm-hmm. right? They look at, there's different ways to measure testosterone or different, like free testosterone, different types of testosterone, right? And the criteria, because they say, okay, you're within range, you're good. So you can be 200, which really is on the lowest end and unhealthy in a sense, right? But as far as they're concerned, you're good. Mm-hmm. So you're going to walk away with the feeling that there's no issue. But when I go to you, there's a different approach. So what are some things that, let's say, people choose not to go to, although I think everybody here should, but what are some things they can ask the general practitioners to look for? And is there a way around it? Because I know I'm rambling, but for example, one of our instructors went to a doctor to get his testosterone, and they wouldn't give him the test because he didn't qualify in a sense.
Right.
So what are some things we can do for that?
Sure. So the challenge, of course, is that when I went to medical school, I learned nothing about testosterone. I never learned anything about it. I didn't know levels of it. I didn't know how to give it. I didn't even know it was a problem. In fact, when I first started my training, I was like, I'm never going to use testosterone. It causes cancer, right? That was what I thought, because that's what you kind of learn because you don't know anything about hormones. So it's the same thing many of you may have heard. It's like, oh, hormones are bad. They cause cancer. They can't possibly be good. But then if you think about it, right, who has the highest amount of testosterone? Like if you're thinking about our population, what group of males has the highest testosterone levels? Well, athletes. That's probably true in this room. But like from an age standpoint, right? It's probably like, men in their early 20s, right? And if that was true, that testosterone caused cancer, every man in America in their 20s would have prostate cancer. So clearly that's not a valid argument. Same thing with estrogen, right? If estrogen caused cancer, every woman of childbearing age would have breast cancer, God forbid, right? So you would never, that doesn't make any sense. So there's more to the argument. The thing is it's a lack of training. We don't really get taught about testosterone in medical school. So when you go to your primary care doctor, it's not that they're evil, it's that they just don't know. And so since they don't know, they're not comfortable with it. So we're taught in medical school that when you have normal values, if your lab test is within normal limits, there cannot be anything wrong with you. That's what we're taught. Those normal limits are based on tens of thousands of patients, many of whom are sick or ill. So what is normal for, say, an 85-year-old guy in a nursing home with multiple medical problems isn't going to be where a guy in his 40s feels his best. So it's relative. So if you look at the LabCorp range for men, it changes all the time, but it's roughly like 250 to 904. That's the range. It's huge. Now, if you came in and your level was 251, your doctor would say you're normal. There's nothing we need to do about it. Well, but doc, I have erectile dysfunction and I don't want to get out of bed in the morning and I have depression and I can't work out and I feel like, a turd, right? I have all these things. Well, that's okay. You probably need an antidepressant. That's the answer you'll often get. And the reason is again, because we're taught that if you are normal within normal limits, there can't be anything wrong with you. So this is one of these cases with functional medicine. We look at optimal ranges. So for a man, an optimal range is 600 to 900. That's where men are going to feel their best. Women, the range is a little different. Usually, if they're not on any supplementation, like 30 to 50 is where most women will feel best. Some women have a lot lower than that. Okay, and then they may be experiencing the same thing as men. They may still be within normal limits because the cutoff for a woman is less than, I think they changed it. It's like either 4 or 5. So you'd have to have a level of 3, which is almost 0 for testosterone in order to be diagnosed with low testosterone as a woman. So they make it very difficult.
You say women naturally produce testosterone?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
In their testicles. Science.
and by the way, men produce estrogen. So yeah, so we both have the complementary hormone. So we think of estrogen as the predominant hormone for women. If men didn't have estrogen in their body, they would develop broken bones. They wouldn't be able to think. They would have heart attacks at much greater rates. In fact, the reason that women are thought to have lower amounts of heart attacks than men leading up to menopause is because of estrogen. They have a greater amount of estrogen.
Statistically, with the men that get breast cancer, do they tend to have a higher, more abnormal estrogen testosterone
ratio?
there?
They could. So breast cancer, fortunately, is incredibly rare in men. And I'm not a breast cancer expert, so it's hard for me to comment. With women, by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have a higher amount of estrogen, by the way, to have breast cancer either. Many times the breast cancers will be what's called hormone negative, meaning they're not responsive to a particular hormone. We always worry, could the tumor be responsive to that hormone and then grow in response if you give somebody a hormone? So for men, before we would start them on testosterone, I always do a prostate exam on them, and I get a blood test for the prostate to make sure that we're dealing with healthy tissue.
I feel like you skipped that on me.
Feel like I skipped it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Every month we skip it.
In his defense, Eric did offer to give me a prostate exam. I'm like, no, our relationship is, different. I can't have you give me a prostate exam.
With friends, we have them go to their own doctor.
Right.
Any age group?
Any age. Well, so the idea is if I'm starting a man on testosterone, just specifically testosterone, we know that testosterone is actually protective against prostate cancer. So that's the good thing. So a man who has low testosterone is at a higher risk to get prostate cancer than a man who you give testosterone to. So it's counter to what most people think. Okay. Now, that being said, let's say you had a small tumor in the prostate before we started testosterone therapy, and we didn't do an exam or we didn't check a PSA, which is a blood test for the prostate. That tumor could be responsive to testosterone, and the testosterone could cause it to grow at an increased rate. Conversely, with women, if we were going to start a woman on estrogen or progesterone, I make sure that they get a mammogram and a pap smear to make sure that we're starting with healthy tissue for the same reason. So if there is a tumor that's there, we make sure that there's no issue before, and then we're not worried about a tumor forming.
Perfect. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of our members here are very athletically driven. We have a lot of tactical operators within our community. And one thing that I always say is, you know, you're going to go to a doctor, just going to tell you to take a month off and rest whatever injury you have and so forth. You and I had this conversation in the past because I would come to you if I have this issue or that issue. And you're like, well, ideally you should rest, but I know you won't. So in lieu of, right? The most common injuries being soft tissue and so forth. So what are some things that we can do to optimize health in that sense?
Good. So if you obviously rest is always going to be number one, right? So if you can rest something that's injured, that's going to be the number one. Let's say you're not in a position that you can do that. Optimize the body's ability to heal itself. Okay, so make sure at a minimum you're trying to get sleep because the body heals when you sleep. So if you're not sleeping, you're not going to heal. There's no other trick in the book. If you're not gonna rest and give it a chance, you've got to make sure you're getting good sleep. Nutrition. So again, if you have soft tissue injury, making sure that you're eating adequate amounts of protein because our muscles are going to heal and build with protein. That's the building block for muscles. So making sure that you have a clean diet. If you're eating inflammatory foods, if you're eating processed foods, if you're eating sugar, if you're eating trash, it's going to cause a lot of inflammation in your body. Your chance of injury goes up dramatically, unfortunately. So having a cleaner diet is going to not only help you to prevent injury, but it's also going to help you to heal, and then making sure that you're taking in adequate amounts of protein. We've got other tools like testosterone we talked about. If your testosterone levels are not within optimal ranges, your ability to heal after an injury is impaired as well. So when you have operators or law enforcement or fire that get injured, and those are the highest risk folks for having low testosterone, making sure that their levels are optimized is going to give them the best chance to heal after an injury. So if you get a guy in the military and he is getting injured again and again and again, making sure that his testosterone levels are checked and addressed is going to be key. And then lastly, we can use other strategies like peptides. So there's something called BPC 157, which is a peptide that can help the body to heal at an accelerated rate. So there's some other tools. We can use hyperbaric oxygen therapy to cause release of stem cells in the body, which will go to injured areas. Platelet-rich plasma injections. So there's a lot of tools that we can use in the regenerative medicine world that can actually help with healing if you get injured.
And a lot of that I know you offer at your office because last time I was there, you recommended a few of those for me. So can you talk to me a little bit about that oxygen therapy?
Yep.
Because that was a new one for me, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are not familiar with that either.
Yep. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT, have any of you guys ever seen a chamber before? Yeah. In my office. Okay. University of Maryland. So they come in different sizes and shapes. So there's ones that are in the hospital. The ones in the hospital can be anywhere from as big as double the size of this room. So when I was in my residency, I did a hyperbaric month at University of Pennsylvania, and it was a huge chamber. You could put probably 20 patients in there. It was solid metal, and it took a while to compress and decompress. But what's happening is you're putting high pressure into the atmosphere in a hyperbaric chamber, and you are putting an increased amount of oxygen into the atmosphere as well. So that's usually you're given like nasal cannulas to breathe oxygen. And depending on the chamber you're in, it's anywhere from 93% oxygen to 100% oxygen.
Oh, wow.
And what it's doing is that high pressure is allowing a greater percentage of oxygen to get into the bloodstream. And when it gets into the bloodstream, it can then get delivered to the tissues at a higher rate. So oxygen is very important for healing and for regeneration of tissue. So if you're putting more oxygen into the bloodstream and it gets delivered to an area of the body that's injured, that area can heal.
There's such thing as too much oxygen?
There is. So oxygen, you can be toxic with oxygen.
Right.
If you sat here and you were on oxygen all day long, it would cause toxicity. So there is definitely too much of a good thing. So with the hyperbaric chambers that are in the hospital, you're usually getting 100%, but you're only in there for a couple of hours, depending. Like if you're a scuba diver and you get the bends, they might have you in there for a day or two, depending on what you would need done. So that's where, like University of Maryland, that's what they'll put in there. Carbon monoxide poisoning is another thing that will put somebody in a chamber for hours to try to get them better. But for everybody else, usually like an hour or two is what you'll need to spend in there. And then depending on the site or the location, it might be a higher percentage of oxygen or a lower percentage. And it also causes release of stem cells from your bone marrow. So stem cells are the part of your body that goes, they haven't been differentiated, so they can go to different areas of the body and help to heal areas that are injured. So that's how stem cells work. So when you go in a hyperbaric chamber, you'll release stem cells at a higher rate, which can help out with everything from cardiovascular health to healing from injuries to healing wounds like cellulitis or infections, longevity, anti-aging. So a lot of benefits.
Awesome. So obviously, one of your main focuses going into your field right now is the statement you said to me is, I'm tired of treating people once they're sick. I want to keep them from getting sick, right? Which I think is awesome, because that's certainly a different approach than most modern medicine is taking. Now, that aside, assuming a person is already starting to not feel 100%, what are some signs that they should come and see you? Like some things are not quite aligned. What are the biggest cues? They're like, okay, I should go see a doctor, preferably someone that specializes in optimizing health.
All right. So in general, you want to avoid doctors if you can, right? And what can I say? I mean, I've been in the profession. I worked in the ER, right? Like if you had to come see me in the ER, something went, very wrong. Like you want to avoid that at all costs. From a functional medicine standpoint, honestly, you can, a lot of folks come to me, they have nothing wrong. They just want to optimize. They want to be the best and healthiest version of themselves. They want to be proactive. So there doesn't have to be anything wrong with you if you wanted to see a functional medicine doctor. So it could be just being proactive. If you feel like something is off, you used to feel one way, now you're like, I just don't feel like I used to. Like I don't have the energy. The sex drive is gone. I have aches and pains. I feel like I'm an old man or an old woman getting out of bed. That's not how anybody wants to feel. So everybody has their why. There's not just one reason. So it can be anything from just wanting to try to be as healthy as you possibly can to having a diagnosis that you've had I have patients that come, they've had a diagnosis 30, 40 years. They've seen multiple specialists at Hopkins or university. Nobody's been able to give them an answer. Part of it is because the healthcare system is unfortunately broken. I mean, I was a part of it for years. I'm not telling anybody in the mainstream healthcare anything they don't know. It's broken. With the way the insurance companies are set up and how long you have with the doctor, let's face it, you go to your primary care doctor, it's not like they're a bad person, but how much time do they have? You've got like 6 minutes to get your complaint out, right? They've got to write it down. They've got to write you a prescription. They have no time to explain anything to you because it's set up in such a way that they have to get to that next patient. And I know it sounds ridiculous, or they can't make a living. It sounds like, oh, doctors, but the way the insurance companies reimburse, you've got to see volume, 40, 50, 60 patients a day. And if you don't do that, you're not making a living, because that's kind of how traditional medicine is set up now, which is a shame. It should never have been like that, but it kind of is what it is. So this is more of the way I practice is more of a personalized approach. So you get a chance to know somebody, you get a chance to figure out what's going on. It's probably the way it used to be back, again, 100 years ago, right? You went to your family doctor, you sat, he knew about your kids, he knew about your mother, he knew about your house, because you had a chance to talk to them. Now, that's kind of gone. So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. We can go on forever. I have so many more questions rattling, but I have you whenever I need to. So I want to open the floor to everybody else if they have a question. Yeah. Either one of you Russians.
You have 3 questions. Okay, I'll start. So overall, as far as the way that the system is set up right now, so is the primary care physician, you basically under HMO, you pick a primary care, you pick a functional doctor as your primary care, or is it strictly out of pocket?
For the most part, strictly out of pocket. So if you were trying to fit that into the traditional insurance model, there would be no time. You wouldn't be able to see 7 or 8 patients in a day. It just wouldn't be feasible. So most of the time when folks come to see me, they have insurance and they have a primary care doctor, but they're not getting their needs addressed, or they want a different approach because they don't want medications or they don't want the traditional things, and they're looking for an alternative to what they've been given.
I'll tell you, I have in theory, a primary care physician through my insurance. I can't tell when was the last time I saw him because I just couldn't see everything.
And people can't get them. When's the last time you guys tried to get a hold of your primary care doctor and get in? When you need them, it's really hard because they're completely overwhelmed. One of my patients today came in limping. I said, what happened? She goes, oh, I injured my knee in BJJ. I'm like, oh, are you seeing anybody? Well, I can't get into the orthopedist until April. I said, what? How about physical therapy? Yeah, I'm waiting on that too. I can't get in there either, right? So she just injured her knee and she can't get in even to a specialist. And this is with insurance. Unfortunately, she's got good insurance too. Another patient, couldn't get into their primary care doctor to get their blood pressure managed. I mean, so this is happening with regularity, unfortunately. So people are looking for alternatives because they can't get what they need.
Are you still taking new patients?
Yes.
Sorry, get that plug in.
Thank you. I'll give you the $5 later.
I have three questions.
Yep.
They're unrelated, but I'll start with the one that has to do with what we were just talking about, and that is the system, how you were saying, how it's set up where doctors have to go from one patient to the other and they don't have time to explain and all that. If you were to have one, how would you what do you think would be like a solution to that kind of problem?
Oh, we're going super hypothetically policy making right here.
Right.
That's a tough one. So the unfortunate reality is not everybody wants to take a proactive approach or actually spend a lot of time on this kind of thing. Many people want the easy button, like my parents, for instance. I mean, in full disclosure, it's easier to take a pill than to exercise or eat correctly. And my parents are guilty of that. So it's not like I'm, selling other people out. It happens. Some people, they just don't have the time or the energy to invest in themselves. So there's not an easy answer here because you would need more doctors. You would need a completely different healthcare system where people are not using insurance for everything, because insurance is a relatively new thing. It only started like in the 60s or 70s. It has not been around forever. It used to be that seeing a doctor was something you only did if you were sick. Now people go all the time for everything and nobody takes care of themselves. And so when I was in the ER, it would not be unusual. Realistically, I will tell you, I have seen people with stub toes more times than I can count. We say, oh, you came to the ER with a stub toe. I mean, really, they had a stub toe. They didn't even have a broken toe. They didn't take a Tylenol before they came. They got hit with a soccer ball in their belly and they didn't have a mark on them and they wanted to get checked out and they're completely fine. So it goes both ways. If the healthcare system is completely overrun with folks that are using it for the wrong reason, it's really hard to get people taken care of in the way that they deserve to be taken care of. So it goes both ways. It's really hard. I have no easy solution for that one.
And my second question is about something you mentioned at the beginning when we were talking about sleep, and that is the use of electronics when 2 hours going to sleep. I have an iPhone. I have a setting in my iPhone where around sunset, it's called like a night shift or something, and there's also two-tone.
Yep.
Two things, and I have them both on. And essentially, I don't know if it eliminates, but I think it tries to limit the screen and how the blue light are coming out of it. And do you think that helps at all? Do you recommend to keep that on? Does that change the 2-hour rule?
So it's a tough question. So it doesn't eliminate everything. It definitely makes it a little bit better. It's called night shift. And it depends on the device you're using. If it's just a phone, you could certainly use that. Some people have an iPad. Some people have a computer. Some people are watching TV and playing video games. So it depends on the electronic device you're using. Is it better? The answer is probably. The problem with the electronics isn't only the blue light, it's also the stimulation, right? So what are you looking at on your phone? Are you doom scrolling?
He's a teenager boy.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. All right. So are you watching something that's arousing or stimulating? Are you watching something that pisses you off? Are you watching something that brings out significant emotions, right? All of those things are possible, whether it's reading email, social media, watching videos, like all of that stuff can get your nervous system ratcheted up to the next level and make it very difficult for you to come down. The other part of it is the electromagnetic frequencies from the phone. So your phone is constantly emitting electromagnetic frequencies. So when you go to bed, if you have that phone by your bedside table, which a lot of us, well, I don't, but a lot of people do, it is emitting signals constantly throughout the night, which can be very disruptive to sleep architecture. So when you sleep, you go through different phases of sleep that are important for you to have a good restful night. Having that phone on all night next to you is not only dangerous, it's also disruptive to your sleep. So what you want to do is either just put it in the other room away from you to charge, like the bathroom. If you can't do that because you need it like for an alarm clock or whatever, put it on airplane mode. And that way it'll shut down the signal from the phone. So you can engage that anytime.
Yeah, put it on sleep mode, but not close enough.
Well,
You also, so I'm just piggyback off of that question, but you mentioned to me recently, Nicole, because again, my sleep is always an issue. The blue light blocking glasses.
Yep.
So you mentioned 2 brands. and not plugging anybody. I don't know the
Yeah.
companies, but can you mention it to our?
Yeah, I have no relationship with them. So there's a couple of companies that make very good blue blocking glasses. So if you must like look at your phone or you must watch TV, you want to have blue blocking glasses that actually do what they're supposed to. I didn't know this until recently. I used to tell people go on Amazon and buy a pair for $10. They look ugly, but they work. But that's actually not accurate. So there's two companies that I know of that have very high quality ones. Again, I have no financial relationship. One of them is called Viva Rays, VIVA Rays, and the other one is called RA Optics. So they both have high quality blue blocking glasses. So like we're surrounded by LED lights like this, and you're in your house, and we're not meant to have lights all around us at nighttime. So it can be very disruptive to our production of melatonin if you're constantly around LED lights, especially, LEDs are very bad. So you can get blue blocking glasses. You can wear them around your house after the sun goes down. And they're usually, they're either orange or yellow, and they're tinted so that they block the blue light, and then it sets up your body's ability to produce melatonin on its own. Third question?
Third question was, you mentioned multiple times throughout, you were talking about how a lot of stuff we see, the plastic is bad for you, and how there's a lot of chemicals in what we eat and going out to eat and all that, and there's a lot of things that you say are very accessible, that are very bad for you. And I guess the question is why do you think that is? Why do you think the stuff that is so bad for you is so accessible and so popular, as opposed to the stuff that's good for you or doesn't have those?
So Michelle, let me leave that discussion till after the call, because I think we're getting into policy and away from medicine a little bit. I will tell you that he shared a story with me about fluoride and why that's in the water. That kind of blew me away. So we're gonna answer that
I'll
question.
get you that one after.
Yeah,
offline.
is that cool? Okay.
The quick and dirty answer is it's cheap and easy. It's cheap and easy. It's always money.
Yep. Curtis.
Two.
Jesus Christ, people, can you not think you won't?
No, one is just a follow up to the LED lights, because everybody has the LED lights. Like I know some of the LED lights you can change like to red. Does that changing the LED to red, would that help get rid of that blue light?
It's a good question. It's partially true. Yes, that's a great question. So has anyone here wondered why we don't have incandescent bulbs?
I just saw a post on that's why I was asking about.
Yeah.
They were trying to bring them back.
Yes.
To help with that.
Yeah.
Correct? It's
So-
like 40% better.
Well, so the whole argument, and I bought into this hook, line, and sinker, by the way, was that they're not efficient, and we're wasting all this electricity, right? How many other things are we wasting electricity and fuel on that are far worse? How many? I hate to sell them down the river, but like how many police cars and ambulances are left running with the engine running constantly? Okay, we used to have signs outside the ER: "Do not leave the engine running," and the ambulances run and run because carbon monoxide poisoning, right? So we waste things all over this place. So it seems a little bizarre that incandescent bulbs were that inefficient. And by the way, they came out with bulbs that would last for like 90 years. Like it's not like you kept having to throw them out either. But they squat. The guy who invented that, by the way, met a mysterious death. So
Would you have something about Hillary?
So these incandescent bulbs, they were the closest thing that we had to natural light. It was all the spectrum of natural light, not unhealthy for you. Then they came out with fluorescent lights, terrible for you. The flicker is very bad, and the spectrum of light is not very good. LED lights also flicker quite a bit, and so they can be they can be a lot of stress for your eye and your retina. Changing the hue can definitely help. So if you have red lights in the house at nighttime and you dim them, it has to do with a combination of dimming and the spectrum of light, the color. So yes, you can get specialized bulbs. It's better. The best thing is incandescent bulbs. And I heard that, not to get political, but there's a push to get them back in.
Right.
So I hope that happens.
So is it red that's the problem?
Red is what you want. And think about it from an ancestral standpoint. What did we used to do at nighttime before we had electricity? Sit around a campfire. Humans have been adjusted to that for thousands or tens of thousands of years. So our body mechanics have adjusted to that color. When you look at a sunset, what color is it? Usually red and orange. That sets your body in motion for having natural sleep and melatonin production. So that's what our bodies have adjusted to. Blue, of course, is the first thing you see in the morning. It sets the tone for the day. It sets your circadian rhythm up. It gets your rhythm going. So that's why things are blue in the morning, red at night, and why humans do so well with that color scheme.
And second question, is there anything for like guys that you can take over the counter to increase testosterone without?
Do you even want to without knowing your numbers?
I wouldn't just take something, number one, right? Because the thing is A, you may not need it. You may have perfectly normal testosterone and your symptoms could be due to, let's say it's fatigue, for instance. It may have absolutely nothing to do with testosterone. So now you're taking something that you don't need to, that costs money, and theoretically could have interactions with other things. So I would say that find out what your numbers are if you even need it. You might have a completely different problem like sleep apnea or low blood sugar or hypothyroidism. There's so many other things that could mimic fatigue. And so without knowing, I wouldn't just take something. As far as, let's say you did know that you had a low testosterone, the things that I tell young guys to naturally produce their testosterone and increase it are get more sleep, have less stress, lift heavy things, eat red meat or more of it, and have more sex.
Check and check.
Most guys have no opposition to that. Okay. And by the way, that can work for women as well, just so you know. So, so those are 5 natural things that you can do without taking anything. And when you lift heavy things, you naturally produce more testosterone. Red meat is a building block for making testosterone. Poor amounts of sleep will crush your testosterone. Stress will crush your testosterone. One patient asked me, well, I thought all those stockbrokers, I thought they were like type A personalities with high testosterone. I'm like, no, those are the guys that have no testosterone because they're all stressed out all the time. So you can do some natural things to help bring testosterone up without having to take a supplement.
And I want to add one more thing, because conversations that you and I had, again, there's different ways to take testosterone supplementation. The only 2 that you recommended, and correct me if I'm wrong, were either the injections or the pellet. Like, you're not a big fan of the patches or the creams or anything like that, as far as absorption level and the utilization by the body. Am I correct?
So yeah, we have a couple different ways we can get testosterone up. From a supplement standpoint, I really haven't found one that reliably does it. Okay, that's the first thing. Shilajit is one of these supplements that's over the counter that may or may not have some positive impact. I've seen mixed results with it. Some people do well, others do not. Taking certain micronutrients like zinc and selenium and boron are very healthy for the testicles. So a good quality multivitamin would have those. You wouldn't have to spend a lot of money on something special for that. There are certain medications like Clomid or clomiphene, which can help your brain to naturally produce a hormone that goes to your testicles to tell it to turn on and produce more testosterone. So that's another method. And then as far as actual testosterone replacement therapy for men, the best forms are generally injections or pellets. For women, generally creams or pellets. Why the difference? With men, creams are very erratic, the absorption. I used to use them a lot in my practice. I found that levels were all over the place. I didn't reliably get people to where they needed to be. There were side effects. They ended up spinning off all these metabolites that weren't healthy. It just was not a great method. When a man goes to a primary care doctor, the only tool that they generally have is something called androgel, because it's a prescription they can write. It's not a good form of testosterone. It's in a carrier that does not allow good absorption of testosterone. It's a very dilute or weak form of testosterone, so not a lot of milligrams in there. It doesn't work well. So guys get put on it, and they're like, how come I don't feel any better? I thought I was going to feel better with testosterone, and they feel like crap because it's such a horrible medicine. The creams that I get from compounding pharmacies, they didn't fare a whole lot better for men. So injections and pellets tend to be the most reliable, depending on how you want to utilize them. For women, because women need only about 1/10 of the dose of men for testosterone, injections are not a terrific option because the commercially available testosterone is too concentrated for a woman. So you have to get it compounded, and that can be kind of pricey. A lot of men don't seem to mind injections. Women don't necessarily want to do them. It's just kind of personal preference is what I've seen. So women can do injections, but they have to get a compounded medicine, and it has to be a smaller concentration. And so they generally don't always go for that. The creams for women work about 40% of the time. So again, not terribly reliable. The pellets tend to work 90 to 95% of the time for women.
And I take the pellets, but mostly because of lifestyle. We travel so much, and for me to all these ampoules and the syringes and whatever, it just became too cumbersome. The pellets is like a put and forget type thing for 3 months. I just go to.
For those who don't know, a pellet is just a compressed amount of a medication into the size of a grain of rice. So they make it an estrogen, they make testosterone, and you can essentially just do a procedure where you numb up an area of the skin, you make a small incision, you put the pellet underneath the skin, you close it up with some butterfly strips, and then it's good for 3 months.
Yeah, 15 minutes in and out. It's pretty awesome. Yes, Tyler. Yeah, there's a video on YouTube of me getting those inserted. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of my butt on YouTube.
Okay, your thoughts on adaptogens such as
Chandra, ashwagandha, reishi. Do you like them for optimizing health? Do you like them at all? Do you have any thoughts?
I love them. So for those of you who don't know adaptogens, Tyler brought up, adaptogens are nothing more than herbs and botanicals that are designed to help us to deal with stress and our body's perception of stress. Most of the research on them, interestingly, was done in Russia and India. That's where they discovered many of them. There are many different adaptogens out there. So ashwagandha is probably the most well-known one. There's rhodiola. There is schisandra. There is L-theanine. There are probably dozens of them. Rhodiola, ginseng. You've probably heard some of these names thrown about. And what they do is each one of them sort of has its own unique profile of what it's used for. Some of them help to relax you. Some of them give you energy. Some of them mitigate stress. Some can help with anxiety or sleep. Some, so we tend to use them in individuals who have been under a lot of stress. So if somebody rates stress as very high in their life and they're under a particularly stressful point in their lives, it can help to mitigate the stress, change how the body perceives the stress, help support the health of the thyroid and the adrenal glands. The adrenals help you to deal with stress. The thyroid's your master metabolism gland. So I wouldn't say somebody should be on them forever because it's a tool. And with any tool, just like a medicine, I wouldn't want you to be on a medication for life. I really don't want people to be on supplements forever. If you can do well without them, fantastic. So when I use stress adaptogens, I'll use them for anywhere from like 3 to 6 months in some individuals in that range, and then have them take a break. Lion's mane is a mushroom. You brought that up. So mushrooms are other medicinals. Lion's mane is very good for cognition and memory and thought process. It's a sort of a
We
natural.
have a tree that grows it on our property.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Mushrooms are
can tell you
interesting.
some.
Yeah. Some.
Under
the table, man.
I'll trade you a pellet for a mushroom.
So yeah, all of these things have special needs, and it's like anything. I kind of utilize them as tools with individuals. So for somebody who comes in with problems with memory, rather than use something like a prescription that may have a lot of side effects, like people who use ADD medication, different things like that. There's a lot of side effects, so you might want to try something like lion's mane, which might help you with focus and concentration. Or methylene blue is another big one. There are a lot of different things that are out there that are pretty neat and that you can use strategically to improve certain goals. Cool.
I want to say thank you for validating my very most dramatic recent house changes and ingredient and plastic changes that my husband keeps looking at me sideways and what I'm doing. So thank
You mean getting rid of the plastics?
Amongst
I don't
other-
have a problem with the plastic. She gives me a lot of crap on using PEM.
Pam?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
She
fine.
should.
I know, I understand that, but I like PEM. It's easier for me than try to rub olive oil over
Get the
everything.
spray organic olive oil or the
It doesn't
avocado
work-
oil.
It doesn't spray as well.
I'm
So
sorry.
I'm all about sometimes
Okay.
ease.
All right.
Like, oh my God.
Hey,
George will not.
look, you stay out of it. You stay out of it. Is there anybody online that's asking questions? Okay, we've been answering. Okay, perfect. Yep, thank you.
Would you talk on the relationship between higher levels of testosterone and hair loss?
So when testosterone is metabolized in the body, it usually gets metabolized to one of two different products. One of them is called dihydrotestosterone or DHT, and then one is estradiol, which we think of as estrogen. So both of them are very important. So you want these metabolites because they can help. So dihydrotestosterone can help out with libido and strength. Estradiol can help out with bone health, cognition, as an anti-inflammatory for the cardiovascular system. So we need both of them. We don't want to necessarily block them. There is a theory that too much DHT can lead to hair loss. And that DHT doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting too much testosterone. You may just be metabolizing down a pathway that preferentially goes into that DHT. There's a lot we don't know about hair loss because it's interesting because, first of all, most men have testosterone and we're not all bald. That's number one. So we have plenty of DHT.
Yeah, I'm at about 1,000 on average, and my hair is still there.
So that's not the answer, right? Then there are some men who go bald, but then have facial hair, right? Why is that? Why is the hair here different than the hair here, or the hair on your arm or under your arm? We haven't figured a lot of this out. It's a mystery. Like you would think if DHT was so toxic, you would lose the hair everywhere. That's not the case. So there are blockers on the market, DHT blockers. So like a common one you might find is called saw palmetto. That's in supplements. There are prescriptions like finasteride, which is designed to help decrease DHT. The problem with those medications, not the saw palmetto so much because it's kind of mild, but finasteride, if you look it up, there's a black box warning about it causing cancer. So that's like the first thing that's a problem. So do you want to like trade your hair for cancer? I don't. It makes me nervous. Secondly, if you drop that down too much, it'll affect your libido. You can get erectile dysfunction. So you're
that's
getting,
a big one.
yeah, you don't
I
want
don't mind dying young, but no losing libido.
There you go.
That's where I draw the line.
Right. And that's what happens. So these guys get put on this, and then their DHT levels go really low, and then they have no libido or they'll have erectile dysfunction, and they're not in a good place either. So the idea is, if you're going to do it, you do it mildly. So that's why saw palmetto is probably a good option. It doesn't drop it dramatically, but there's still a lot we don't know. And I wish I had an answer for you, but I can tell you that there are plenty of guys who have great levels of testosterone and they have plenty of hair. There are plenty of guys who are pushing very high levels of testosterone and still have hair. There are guys with low levels of testosterone and have gone bald. So the answer is, I don't think we figured it out yet. And it's something that people try to put an easy solution to, but I don't know if we have one yet. Yep.
Is there any side effect from long-term use of supplemental testosterone?
So if it's done safely, the answer is no. So when you are utilizing testosterone in a proper way, meaning keeping it within physiologic levels. So think about a bell curve, right? If the bell curve goes up, you want to be on, this part of the bell curve, right? You don't want to be here where it's too high. You don't want to be here where it's too low. If it's too low, you have risk of dying from all-cause mortality, dying at an earlier age, having more medical maladies, high risk of heart attacks and strokes, and basically death from all cause. If you're at the other end of the spectrum, too high, what ends up happening is you can irritate the prostate. So you can have either, enlargement of the prostate or theoretically prostate inflammation or even theoretically cancer because you're spitting off a lot of bad metabolites. It is irritating to the cardiovascular system. So you can have like a cholesterol panel that looks terrible because you have too high of a level of testosterone, which it basically drives inflammation. The other problem is that when if you take higher levels of testosterone than you need, it causes the receptors for the testosterone to basically go numb to the hormone. So they become resistant to the testosterone. You need higher and higher levels in order to achieve the same effect. So guys who are in the gym who are abusing testosterone many times will come in with very, very high levels of testosterone, and they have no sex drive and they have impotence, which is the exact opposite of what you'd think. Like they have these super high levels of testosterone. They should be sex beasts, but they're not. They're having problems because it's being dosed in a way that's unhealthy for them. So you always want to, when you use testosterone, if it's used properly, it decreases all-cause mortality, decreases the risk of prostate cancer, heart disease, you name it, a better quality of life as well. And so you're going to live healthier and you're going to live longer. And you can use it till the day you die if you wanted to.
Am I correct in stating, because I think one of the reasons why we waited to put me on testosterone is because we wanted to have a child. And once you get on testosterone supplementation, your body stops or significantly decreases its own production of it. So once you're on it, essentially, you should be, or presumably you would be on it for life, right? Because getting off of it, you kind of shut down your own body's ability.
Yep. So that may dovetail into what you were asking. So when you're on testosterone, you're shutting down your body's own natural ability to produce it. That being said, I don't put people on testosterone whose body is producing adequate amounts. There's no purpose. If you have a good amount of testosterone, I would never put you on a testosterone replacement therapy just to get you a little bit higher. Like if you had a level of 600, I would not put you on an injectable to get you to 900. That in my mind is wrong. But once you're on it, you can come off at any time you want. Your levels will come back down to where you were before you started. You'll feel lousy probably for a couple of months because you're not used to that change in testosterone. The other thing is we don't want to use it in young guys who are in their 20s simply because it also makes you sterile. Why? Because the testicles basically have two jobs: produce testosterone and produce sperm. And if you give somebody testosterone, it's a feedback loop. It tells the testicles that there's plenty of testosterone around so they can just chill out, go to sleep, and stop producing. They don't need to anymore. So the testosterone production will go down, the testicle production of sperm will go down, and the sperm count will go down.
I will say, don't count on it as a birth control method.
No.
What do you do if you're young and have low testosterone?
You might use, well, there's a couple of things. You could use things like clomiphene or Clomid or N-clomiphene, which is another medication. Both of those tell the brain to release something called luteinizing hormone, which goes down to the testicles and says, hey, turn on, wake up, start producing testosterone. So you can try that. There's another medication called HCG that we can use as an injectable. Again, can produce increased growth of testicles and production of testosterone. In worst case scenario, like you try those things and they don't work, you have them go bank sperm, because like they may not want to have a kid today, but 10 years from then they might. So you have them go to the sperm bank, make a donation so that they have it just in case. And then, I try to use it as a last resort. I really don't want to put guys in their 20s or 30s on testosterone if I can help it.
I'm gonna ask one more question, and then just because I want to be straight with time, we're gonna cut late, and then if some people have questions, they can reach out to you later. You talk a lot about the inflammation, and inflammation obviously it's a big cause in a lot of ailments this day and age, right? So what are some of the lead causes that you see for inflammation, and how can we decrease that, to enhance life and health?
So there's a term, I don't know if you guys have ever heard it, called inflammaging that's out there. It's like inflammation causing aging. So inflammation is not all good or all bad, right? You have to have some inflammation in your body. So for instance, BK goes and he deadlifts, he's creating some level of inflammation in his muscles. His muscles are then responding to that and growing and repairing. And that inflammation process is actually crucial in order to heal. So we would never want to get rid of all inflammation. It does serve some role in the body. Like when you heal from a wound, what does it look like? You have that little redness around the wound as it heals. That's a degree of inflammation. So we don't want to shut it all down. But sometimes having excess inflammation is bad. We don't want excess inflammation. So what are things that can drive inflammation? Well, we talked about toxins, right? So toxins in the environment, poisons that we eat or are exposed to, that can definitely drive inflammation. When you're cooking, we talked a little bit about seed oils. There are inflammatory foods. So what are the inflammatory foods? Anything that's fried, anything that's cooked in these different seed oils, sugar, things that turn into sugar, like carbohydrates. So eating too many carbohydrates can turn into too much sugar, which can lead to inflammation. So processed foods are highly inflammatory. So again, eating in a cleaner fashion can lead to less inflammation. You tend to be inflamed if you're under large amounts of stress. Stress is never going away. There's stress every single day of all of our lives, but how we deal with that stress can mitigate some of it and also can decrease inflammation. Using tools like meditation, exercise, yoga, massage, acupuncture, being with friends, having social environments, that all decreases stress. So lack of sleep is inflammatory. So a lot of this comes down to the basics. You don't have to get fancy, take a lot of anti-inflammatory supplements. You can, right? But we shouldn't rely on them. We should rely on the easier, the more available things that don't require us to spend money. Those are things that can make a big difference. Things that you do with your life, like exercise and getting some sleep and getting some rest, having good relationships, eating clean. That's where it's at.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Rick, before I let you go, just for people, if you want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to?
Sure. So my practice is Opti Health Institute. So optihealthinstitutemd.com is our website. You can look us up on the internet. BK can get you our phone number for the office, and you can give us a call and we can take care of you.
Or how about a card?
I will give you one afterwards. Sure.
For those that are here in person.
In person.
Awesome.
Otherwise, we'll take a picture of it and send it out.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much. This was great. Love it. Thanks, brother. Thank you. Appreciate it.